They never saw it coming. Not because you were loud, not because you announced anything, but because you learned how to stay quiet while growing stronger every single day. You stood in the same room, wore the same face, spoke the same simple words, yet inside you were changing. You listened more than you spoke. You watched more than you reacted. While they were busy underestimating you, you were building something unbreakable. This is not luck. This is not coincidence. This is the power of patience mixed with purpose. You didn't rush. You didn't explain. You didn't fight for approval. You waited. And now the silence around you is louder than anything you could have ever said. Before this goes any further, pause for a moment. If this message hits something deep inside you, if you feel seen without being exposed, then show your support quietly, just like you've learned to live. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment that speaks without explaining too much. Not for noise, not for attention, but to mark that you are here, listening, growing, preparing. Let this space become a place for people who move in silence and rise with intention. They thought you were harmless because you didn't react. They thought you were weak because you didn't argue. They thought you were lost because you didn't explain your path. But what they didn't understand is that silence is not emptiness. Silence is control. Silence is observation. Silence is strategy. While they spoke, you studied. While they laughed, you learned. While they assumed, you prepared. You never corrected them because you didn't need to. You let them believe whatever made them comfortable. You let them feel ahead. You let them relax. And in that comfort, they exposed everything. You learned how people reveal their intentions when they think you're not paying attention. You learned how words change when pride feels safe. You learned who talks big and who actually moves. And most importantly, you learned who doubted you first. You kept that memory, not with anger, not with revenge, but with clarity. Because clarity sharpens focus, and focus builds results. There was a time when being overlooked hurt, when being ignored felt heavy, when you wondered if staying quiet was a mistake. But instead of letting that pain turn into noise, you turned it into fuel. You worked when no one was watching. You improved when no one was clapping. You disciplined yourself when no one expected anything from you. That's the difference. That's the advantage. When nobody believes in you, there's no pressure to perform for them. There's only room to become better for yourself. They didn't notice the small changes. The way your posture shifted, the way your eyes stayed calm, the way your words became fewer but stronger. They didn't notice because they were busy measuring loud success. But real power doesn't announce itself early. Real power waits until it's undeniable. You didn't need to prove anything. You needed to become something. At some point, the shift happened, quietly, subtly. You walked into rooms the same way, but the energy changed. Conversations paused when you spoke. Eyes followed when you moved. Not because you demanded attention, but because presence can't be hidden forever. That's when confusion started. That's when questions formed. That's when they realized something was different, but couldn't explain what. You never told them your plan. You never shared your struggles. You never asked for validation. You protected your process because you understood something most people don't. The moment you explain too much, you invite doubt. The moment you announce too early, you weaken momentum. So you stayed reserved, you stayed focused, you stayed patient. They thought you were playing small. What they didn't know is that you were playing long. You weren't interested in quick reactions or temporary wins. You were building depth. You were stacking discipline. You were shaping a version of yourself that wouldn't need permission to rise. And now, when your results speak, there are no arguments left, no explanations required, no debates possible. The same people who underestimated you now struggle to find words. Not because you embarrassed them, not because you attacked them, but because reality arrived without warning. That's the most powerful outcome. Not proving them wrong with noise, but letting silence do the work. Letting consistency answer every doubt. Letting growth speak where arguments never could. You didn't fool them with lies. You fooled them with discipline. You fooled them by not reacting. You fooled them by mastering yourself instead of trying to control others. And now they're left replaying moments, realizing too late that the signs were always there. This is what happens when patience meets purpose. This is what happens when you stop explaining and start executing. This is what happens when you learn that silence isn't weakness, preparation. And this is only the beginning. There comes a moment when you realize the quiet was never about hiding. It was about refining. You weren't shrinking yourself, you were sharpening yourself. Every day you chose restraint over reaction, you gained something most people never develop: control. Control over emotions, control over impulses, control over direction. While others wasted energy proving points, you conserved energy building strength. That discipline separated you long before success ever showed up. They confused your calm with confusion. They mistook your patience for hesitation. But patience is a decision, not a delay. You understood timing. You understood that rushing exposes weaknesses, while waiting strengthens foundations. You let time do its work on you. You let repetition build confidence. You let pressure train your mind. And you did it alone, without applause, without reassurance, without approval. You stopped explaining yourself because you learned something critical. People don't listen to understand, they listen to respond. So you stopped feeding conversations that drained your focus. You stopped defending choices that weren't meant to be understood yet. You protected your vision like it was fragile, because it was. Not fragile in weakness, but fragile in growth. Seeds don't grow faster when everyone digs them up to check progress. There were nights when doubt whispered louder than encouragement ever had. Moments when silence felt heavy. Times when you questioned if anyone would ever notice the work you were putting in. But instead of letting that doubt turn into bitterness, you let it turn into precision. You refined your habits. You corrected your flaws. You strengthened what needed strengthening. Quietly, relentlessly. You watched people celebrate small wins loudly while you stayed focused on long-term outcomes. You saw how quickly attention fades when there's nothing solid underneath. That's when you understood why staying underestimated was a gift. Expectations are heavy. Freedom is light. And freedom allowed you to move without pressure, without comparison, without distraction. Over time, your mindset changed. You stopped craving recognition. You stopped seeking validation. You stopped measuring yourself against anyone else. Your standards became internal. Your competition became personal. Your motivation became disciplined rather than emotional. That shift is rare. That shift is dangerous. Because once you stop needing external approval, no one can control you. They didn't hear about your struggles. They didn't see your sacrifices. They didn't know what you gave up to become who you are now. And they don't need to know, because explanations don't add value to results. Results stand alone. Results speak clearly. Results leave no room for debate. When progress finally showed, it didn't arrive loudly. It arrived confidently. It arrived stable. It arrived undeniable. And that's when the atmosphere changed. Not because you demanded respect, but because respect naturally follows consistency. Conversations shifted. Opinions softened. Assumptions collapsed. Some tried to act like they always believed in you. Others stayed silent, processing the realization that they misjudged you. And a few couldn't speak at all, because admitting they were wrong would require self-awareness they never developed. You didn't need their words. You already had confirmation in your growth. What they couldn't understand is that you never aimed to impress them. You aimed to improve yourself. That difference changes everything. Impressing fades. Improving compounds. And compounding effort over time creates a presence that can't be ignored. You didn't rise by stepping on anyone. You rose by standing firm when it was easier to quit. You rose by choosing discipline when motivation disappeared. You rose by staying consistent when nobody was watching. That's why your success feels solid. That's why it doesn't shake under pressure. Now, when you walk forward, there's a quiet certainty in your movement, not arrogance, not pride, just clarity. You know what you're capable of because you built it yourself. You know what you endured because you didn't broadcast it. You know what you earned because you paid the price privately. And the most powerful part is this: you're still not finished. You're still not loud. You're still not explaining. You're still growing. The silence remains, but now it carries weight. Now it commands attention without asking for it. They can't speak, not because you silenced them, but because your journey answered every question they never asked you directly. Your consistency became the explanation. Your discipline became the proof. Your calm became the message. This is what it means to move in silence and let results echo. The truth about power is that most people misunderstand it. They chase noise, recognition, applause. They think influence comes from speaking loudest, from demanding attention. But real power is quieter. Real power waits. Real power works. While others rest, while others complain, while others think life owes them explanations. You learn that lesson early. You learn that to move with authority, you must first master yourself. And mastery is never public. Mastery is private, relentless, almost invisible, until it's undeniable. Every choice you made, every sacrifice you endured, every moment you endured criticism in silence, it was all shaping a version of yourself that couldn't be shaken. They laughed, they doubted, they questioned, but that didn't matter. They never mattered. What mattered was your commitment to becoming unstoppable. Every setback was a lesson. Every insult was a mirror showing their weakness, not yours. Every underestimated move was a chance to rise silently. You didn't retaliate because retaliation feeds chaos. You acted strategically because growth feeds results. Think of every time they tried to draw you into arguments, every time they wanted your attention to validate themselves. You didn't take the bait. You didn't waste energy proving yourself. You stayed above it. You stayed calm. You stayed calculating. And that, more than anything, confused them. Not because you were unpredictable, but because you refused to become predictable by their expectations. They expected a reaction. They expected noise. Instead, you gave them patience, consistency, and silence. And silence is more powerful than words. Silence doesn't need applause. Silence doesn't fade. Silence changes perception without effort. The way you moved, the way you grew, the way you prepared, it became a language they couldn't read. Every unnoticed step became part of a pattern they never saw coming. While they were busy talking, you were strategizing. While they were seeking attention, you were seeking growth. While they were measuring others, you were measuring yourself. And measurement of self is dangerous for those who underestimate it, because it leads to perfection, it leads to timing, it leads to results that can't be ignored or reversed. They never understood how strong you were in private. They never understood that discipline is silent, that ambition is invisible, that determination doesn't ask permission. They only saw fragments, moments, shadows. And those shadows grew into a reality they could no longer deny. Their doubts, their judgments, their assumptions, they became irrelevant and watching them process that irrelevance without being able to speak. That is the purest victory of all. You didn't play them through lies. You played them through excellence. You played them through restraint. You played them through patience. You let them underestimate. Let them misjudge. Let them overconfidently assume. And every assumption they made became a stepping stone for you. Every false narrative they built about you became fuel. Every moment they overlooked you became power in your hands. And now when they finally realize what's happening, their voices falter. Their confidence collapses. Their certainty fades. And the truth is, they never really knew you at all. Power doesn't need to shout. Influence doesn't need to beg. Respect doesn't need to be demanded. The silent, disciplined, consistent version of yourself commands all three without ever saying a word. And that is the ultimate advantage. That is why they can't speak. That is why they stumble. That is why they replay moments, trying to figure out how they missed it all. You played them perfectly, not through manipulation, but through mastery of yourself. Not through chaos, but through control. Not through words, but through presence. And in this silence, there is a freedom they will never feel. Because freedom doesn't come from convincing others. Freedom comes from being untouchable in your mind, unshakable in your actions, unstoppable in your path. And that freedom is magnetic. It draws respect, attention, and opportunity without asking for any of them. It's the kind of power that makes observers freeze, makes doubters stumble, and leaves rivals speechless. Now, imagine the future. Every step you take, every choice you make, every action is deliberate. You move not to impress, not to respond, not to compete, but to elevate. You let the world test itself against your discipline, your preparation, your patience. And they always fail because they react. You respond. They stumble. You rise. They speak. You act. This is the rhythm of mastery. This is the dance of someone who has learned that silence can roar louder than words ever could. And the most profound lesson here is this: the moment you stop trying to be understood, the moment you stop defending yourself, the moment you stop reacting to noise, that is the moment your power becomes undeniable. That is the moment results become your voice. That is the moment presence becomes your language. That is the moment people who doubted you realize too late that they were never even in the game. You didn't need them to validate your journey. You didn't need them to witness your preparation. You didn't need them to recognize your strategy. You only needed yourself. And that is why you cannot be stopped. You cannot be shaken. You cannot be explained away. The silence around you is not absence. It is authority. And authority never begs. Authority never doubts. Authority never needs to explain. Authority simply exists. And in its existence, it leaves others speechless. And now, the moment comes. The moment you've been building for years, silently, patiently, relentlessly. The moment when everything you've endured, every ounce of discipline, every sacrifice, every quiet effort, all converge into a force too strong to ignore. This is not sudden. This is not accidental. This is the result of mastery. They are left standing in the aftermath, stunned, trying to find words that don't exist. They search for excuses, for explanations, for reasons, but none are available. Because the truth is, you didn't need to explain. You didn't need permission. You didn't need validation. You only needed yourself, and you became undeniable. They believed they could predict you. They believed they could understand you. They believed that silence meant weakness. But silence is not absence. Silence is preparation. Silence is power waiting to emerge. And now that power is not just visible, it's undeniable. You have become a force they cannot name, a presence they cannot quantify, a reality they cannot argue against. They wanted stories. You gave results. They wanted drama. You gave growth. They wanted noise. You gave calm certainty. And in that certainty, you leave them speechless. Every person who doubted you now walks in hesitation. Every word they ever spoke against you fades in their minds. Every assumption they made now collapses under the weight of what you've become. They never realized it before, but they are witnessing something that cannot be faked, cannot be argued, cannot be ignored. And the most beautiful part is this: you didn't have to fight them to reach this point. You didn't need confrontation. You didn't need anger. You didn't need to prove anything to anyone but yourself. And that is the ultimate power. True power doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself through undeniable presence, through results, through the silence that speaks louder than any words ever could. You understand the final truth. They will never speak of you with certainty. They will never claim to understand your journey. They will never attempt to follow your path because it requires something they never developed: discipline, patience, and the ability to remain quiet while growing unstoppable. And this is why they cannot speak. They are outmatched, not because of what you said, but because of what you became. You became the answer they never expected. You became the reality they cannot manipulate. You became the storm that arrived without warning. And yet, you remain composed. You remain calm. You remain silent in the way only the truly powerful can. You are not cruel. You are not boastful. You are not seeking revenge. You are simply the product of relentless focus, unwavering discipline, and unwavering belief in yourself. That combination is terrifying to anyone who tries to control, to underestimate, to misjudge, because it cannot be reasoned with, it cannot be argued with. It simply exists, and in its existence, it changes everything. This is the moment where silence becomes a language, where presence becomes authority, where mastery becomes visible without effort. You have trained yourself to a point where noise, doubt, and opinion are irrelevant. And now, as they scramble to find words, as they hesitate to even acknowledge your existence in full, the truth is crystal clear. You have won in the way that matters most. Not by shouting, not by fighting, not by explaining. You have won by becoming unshakable, undeniable, unstoppable. They cannot speak because the person they assumed was quiet, weak, or harmless is now someone they cannot confront, cannot challenge, and cannot diminish. And that, above all else, is the victory you have earned. A victory built not on chaos, but on order. Not on luck, but on relentless preparation. Not on anger, but on control. You played them perfectly, not by deceiving them, but by mastering yourself to a degree they could never imagine. And here is the final, undeniable truth. What they see now is only the beginning. You are not finished. You will continue to grow. You will continue to refine. You will continue to act with purpose while the world reacts in confusion. And in that ongoing journey, the silence you mastered will remain your greatest ally. It will shield you. It will protect you. It will elevate you. And every step you take forward will leave observers struggling to understand what they never paid attention to in the first place.